morning, everyone, and welcome to the IMAGIN Webinar Series, our Season 2, Episode 3. Today, we're going to be seeing a presentation by Trevor Floyd from St. Clair County on exploring your land values and your assessor's dashboard information. And so he'll be taking us through how he has scripted and processed through BS&A data, combining it with GIS, and sharing how he gets the assessor's information to help them do their assessment administration. Before we jump into that, I do have a few slides of just some information. I'd like to thank our webinar series sponsors that have sponsored us so far this year. That includes Giffords Webster, BS&A, Hubble, Roth & Clark, and Fishbeck. So make sure to check out their websites for any GIS support or data support from BS&A that you might need. And we'll be hearing a lot about the BS&A software today. Want to just mention a couple of upcoming events for IMAGIN. We have a Geo Roundtable next week, Tuesday, talking about redistricting and apportionment of census data. Many of you might be involved in that starting here this fall when the data finally becomes available, but we got to start on processing that pretty soon here. So we'll be talking about different software platforms, having an open discussion about how you might be able to leverage your GIS technology to help your apportionment committee or redistricting committee work through that process. So that is next week, Tuesday. And it actually starts at 4 o'clock. I have that time wrong on this slide. The last one started at 3:30. So 4 o'clock, watch for that and look at the IMAGIN website, events and calendar on the homepage for more information on that. And we've got another webinar planned for July 22nd. Shanna Martrusi is from the Michigan State Police Emergency Management and Homeland Security Division. We'll be talking about COVID dashboards and the dashboard that so many of us got familiar with over the last year plus during this COVID pandemic. And she'll be talking about how that was leveraged across the entire state of Michigan organization to disseminate data. So she'll be sharing in July. So look for that under the webinars tab. And with that, just a couple of housekeeping things. Oops, my slides jumped. Use the chat panel for any questions. Actually, I'm sorry, the questions panel for any questions you may have. Jerry Swanson from Traverse City and I will be monitoring those, and we'll get those to Trevor either in the middle of or at the end of his presentation as we see fit. And then we'll try to get those answered as much as possible. The webinar is being recorded, and we'll get the slide decks and all the information loaded up to our website at imagin.org. In the next few days, probably by middle of next week. And again, check out IMAGIN's website for all the information you need. With that, I'm going to hand things over to Trevor, and we'll have him start his presentation.
I know we have a bit of a mixed audience today. We have a lot of GIS people, and I believe our equalization director sent out the link to this conference to a bunch of assessing people. So we'll try and keep this a little more broad and looking at the tools we created and kind of what is built in the back end. I'd really like to thank the folks at BS&A Software. David and Dan Kerwin have helped over the past, gosh, it's been more than a decade of us trying to create tools to help support our local assessors. Oh, gee, thanks. And also want to thank ESRI for having their really cool opportunity to have developer licensing and developer areas on Arcgis Online. All of this content is hosted on Arcgis Online, so we can look at it, explore it, and determine how many credits these pieces will take. The main dashboard we're going to look at with all the assessing components, I think it was getting down right around 2 credits a day, but there's ways that you can set this up so that it only runs for a certain time frame. What I'm really hoping to be able to see is some of the other communities and counties maybe pick this up and give us some direction. When we get into the dashboards, there's a little bit slow to respond in some areas because we've opened up a lot of the tools and tips so that the assessors can explore things that maybe they decide they don't want to as part of their business practice. So one of the things that we've stumbled on are story maps. And they're a great place to be able to put a lot of tools and resources all connected to one link. The first dashboard that we created for this project was everything on one, residential, commercial, everything all mixed up into one. And that dashboard started going really slow. So we split everything off into various components. So you have an overview, ag, commercial, industrial. So this is a story map. The links are out there. It's live. All the connections to how pieces work are all in here. But let's go right into the dashboard and have a peek at one of the boards to see what's going on. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up the general selector. Again, this is all driven by a script. I'll show the script later on, and we'll go over BS&A and kind of where the pieces are coming from inside of BS&A, so that the assessors can kind of have an idea where the data is being collected from, and the GIS people can also get an idea of what's going on. So this is the entire county, some 70,000 parcels or more. You're seeing some charts based on the window. For performance sake, we have a speed component where you can just pick a community. It's also nice to be able to sort out just a community. So let's go ahead and hit done. This is hidden by my little panel. That's not a good spot for it. So we're filtering down to 7420. ArcMap is going to, or ArcGIS Online is going to slowly redraw and just give us 7420. Let's give it a hand by zooming in. So now we can see the different classes that are in a view frame and the different evaluation methods that were used in this area. So we can see there's some things are done by front foot, some are done by a rate table, and some are done by acreage. So let's go ahead and look at rate table, because that's kind of interesting. And it's going to sort out those that are not done by a rate table. And now we can see the classes that are in that rate table. We can jump over and we can see the breakdown of those classes. We can see the land tables that are in here. We can see the full text harvested from the rate table. So you can see this was from Keewatin. There's a road. That's just from Keewatin. That's Keewatin. So there's various rate tables. And for those in assessing, they know where the rate tables are coming from. For us GIS folks, I'll show you here in a second. And then you have a tab where that's gone through and it's generalized everything out in a full text listing. So you can see there's 7 parcels that meet these groupings and their acreage ranges. Some of these have been really interesting. So let's say these 7 are in a rate table for 20 plus acreage, and we can see the range is actually from 20 to 42 acres. Sometimes you'll see acreages that are outside of the table range, and that might be something the assessor wants to look at, or maybe there's some exclusions or something going on that make it a unique case. So that's kind of a cool thing that's out there, and actually there's links to our GeoCortex. So if you're curious what that parcel looks like, you can click on it. The next tab over in our window is BS&A records without polygons. One of the things that I find hard as a mapping person inside the BS&A software, sometimes you don't know when there's a join that goes on or there's a jump between the database and the map. You don't know what records aren't being found. So this is going through and it's actually giving us a list of those parcels that are currently mapped on our system, and that's updated quite often. And then our annual import from BS&A. What we found this year is there's a lot more of them in there because of the change from taxable, including all the new taxable classes. And then there's also a tab on here that there's, if there's a record, it's not in the local unit, but we have it, there's none in this window. And this under 4 foot thing, that was interesting. We'll get into that a little bit because we tried to speed up our parcels. So these are parcels that are drawn that are under 4 feet. And some of them make sense. Actually, all of them kind of make sense now. Other ones were just slivers that were floating around up there. So the map is completely interactive. You can zoom around, you can get an overview of what's going on in your community. And these are all grouped together by the tax class, ECF, and neighborhood values. If we close out of this one and go back to our land values one, we can actually zip down to, let's go to agriculture and open a map specifically keyed to agriculture. Now the other one, you weren't able to get into the individual parcel records, but this board limited to agriculture is responsive enough to be able to let us see the values and see what's going on inside of our data. As all the other ones, it's going to load up with the entire county, but we can hit this filter over here and then filter down to just a certain community. Looks like with the webinar running, ArcGIS Online is a little bit slower. Come on. So this board is a lot like all of the other boards where we have charts off to the side where you can filter. Let's see if we can give it enough to filter. There we go. They're starting to come in. So now we have has buildings and no buildings is a filterable category over here. This comes from the BS&A field that's automatically triggered when an assessor puts a building on a parcel. So it doesn't exactly match the class. It can give you an indication of what the class should be, but it doesn't always match it perfectly. Let's zoom in a little bit more on an area, see if we can help out Arcgis Online. With the webinar recording in the background, it seems to be going a whole lot slower. So now we can click the little button for has buildings. So it's gonna filter out all the ones that have buildings. So this light colored one, it's telling me it's in a class that's not a developed class, but for some reason it's got a has buildings trigger on it. It's quite possible this is an agricultural property, maybe it only has a shed or something on it. Then we can go in, we can see the full text land values. We can go into a list, we can see all the properties that are in here and the stats that are about them. And as you saw, the nice little chart down here at the bottom wakes up and shows you how properties are valued. And it will update as you zoom around, as you make these choices in ECS and land values. And then let me click back off of here so you can see. One of the cool things about the dashboard experience is we don't know what all these categories are before the script runs. The script actually builds all the data and all the infrastructure to support this out of the back end. And it assembles all of these categories based on data that it actually harvests from the BS&A database. It is impressive that the dashboard is able to live render this and come up with the pie charts. The only bad thing is they all come in gray. It'd be really cool if we could throw some kind of a randomizer on here, but unfortunately they're all gray. If you want to see them bigger, you can hit the make it bigger button. But it's cool that it's live and dynamic. One of the things that we were looking at this for is the Drain Commission was actually in the office one day, and we were curious of what properties along a drain actually had drain exemptions on them. And it was interesting to go through these different categories and find the word drain right away, click on the pies, and then see the whole corridor light up as it went through with all the drains. And the chart's interactive with the map. It should wake up and flash on there. Just all basic stuff out of the dashboard experience. So like I said, there's one link that goes through all of the different dashboards: ag, commercial, industrial, residential. If you look at the county dashboard, it'll give you links to some other presentations. There's actually a presentation on here based on the investigations that we did into what is wanted for March border review and then how this came to play. So let's look at some screenshots out of BS&A so we can get an idea where this data is coming from. This is the main screen in BS&A. One of the big things we look for is whether or not a parcel is active or not, and then we're going after its current class. Now in the last exempt wording, we're looking at the ECF-NA, that's this guy here. And then we're also looking at school. In St. Clair County, schools haven't played as big of a role as some of our fellow county partners, but the script automatically goes for school. The next big thing you're after is this land button. When you hit the land button, this is where all the valuation data occurs and how we're pulling the land value data. The script is targeting values and is going through and evaluating, okay, is it a frontage value? Is it an acreage value? Is it a square footage value? And then the rate tables are following it under this little guy right here. It's driven by the land table the assessor has chosen. So this actually, the words that are on here can change. And sometimes it says right away, sometimes it says rate tables. But the script is really only looking to determine whether or not there's a value. You might think it's pretty easy. There's only 4 choices here, but actually for each parcel, they can do any combination of these. So after the script does its in-house cleanup, it's going to start trying to figure out exactly how the land was valued. And then under each one of these buttons, so if you press this button, this little chart comes up and you can actually have 3 more tables where you can slice up how you created this frontage. And these can be positive or negative values, which gave this the programming a little bit of a difficult hurdle. But we're going through each one of these, determining how it's valued, and then assigning that as a front footage component. Acreage has 2 different areas where they can put in information. Square footage, that's nice and simple. It only has the 1 value. And then you have the really complicated one, which is this rate table. And the rate tables are very dynamic. They change, and there's a whole bunch of them. Thankfully, in St. Clair County, one community used, I believe, 5 of these slots. So we didn't write the script to go through everything, just those first 5. So that's basically where the data is coming from in BS&A. The dashboard we looked at as a precursor to be able to save some processing. I didn't load Arcgis Pro, but let me fire up Arcgis Pro and we'll go in and see what kind of components that the script automatically generates. When we first presented this to our assessors, it was during a March border review workshop, and a gentleman from the state was in teaching the workshop, and one of the things that he remarked on when we created the initial board was that it was fairly impressive because it pulled all of its data from 2 basic components. It pulled everything from a shapefile and a single generic data export from BS&A. When the script runs, it's going to build all of these components. You can see this is an example pulled from Big Rapids. This is all using training data that was from David Kerwin. Apparently he uses Big Rapids as one of his demo communities with some nebulous data. And he shared that so I could customize the script for Big Rapids. If your parcel ID syntax matches Big Rapids, the code's already been fixed. So this container called script AGO, this is what's loaded onto Arcgis Online. You can pick and choose from here. If you wanted to make the credit load a little less, you can see we've already split all the different classes out onto their own boards. That's the parcels that are small. Fast parcels, we tried to speed up the parcels by getting rid of nodes. If anybody has any questions on that, we can talk about that at a later presentation or if there's time later. It also goes through and it creates a brand new subsection and condo geography based on your Sidwell code. And it creates its own local unit database from your parcel ID code as well. These other fields or these other databases, they're just in here as holding areas for the different components that were built. The land table components, the rate table components, the assembly of all the different pieces, and then a working folder. This is really nice if you're the GIS guy and you want to go in and you're trying to figure out what components are in there and you want to maybe pull a certain rate table out. That's what they're mostly in here for. But this is Arcgis Pro. Let's go up to our little map side in the contents, and let's go into tax class for Big Rapids. And that's not it. Let's go to this one. So this is the map I just threw together really quick. It's the Big Rapids area. It used the individual local unit file for Big Rapids to zoom in this target area. And the script automatically, like I said, generated the sections and town sections based on the tax ID number. So if we go in Pro, all of these individual pages were generated by having these components all in one. So let's go navigate to page. So your map series component is already built for however the components that you want to do for your March border review maps right out of the script. Being that this is Arcgis Pro, if you were to run the script, all you'd have to do is repoint these data sets to the locations they are in your drive, and it's off and running. We use Map Series, not inside Pro, but we use Map Series in ArcGIS Desktop to run all of the community wall maps. There's basically data-driven pages that goes through and stops at each community, and there's a data-driven pages that stops at each of the sections on an 11x17 for the land value maps. Just to show that it works somewhere else, community class. This one is one we did just for one of our assessors downstairs. Also has a couple communities up north of us, and she wanted a quick hand mapping. So it was a nice Saturday morning activity. I went through and tried to see if this script could work up there, and off it goes. Let's go to this one. And it's nice because she thought it was really cool because it pulled out one of these, should be the village. There's the village. So because it made this village page, I just stopped. It automatically created all these pages for us. So that's pretty much in Pro. We quickly went over the peak components in ArcGIS Online. Let's see. I'll go in really quick so you can see what the script is. Let's pull the big rapid script. So while we're in this folder, if you're familiar with file geodatabases, there's the file geodata structure. There's this file called local units with a Z. What the script does is if you feed it a GDE for your entire county, it will go through and stop and create the resulting GDEs for all of your local units. So like in St. Clair County, we don't have one database for all our local units that's maintained. All of our local units maintain their own, and at the end of the year, they're brought together into one big database. So during March border review, I can't predict that I'm going to get a particular unit in any order. So what this does is it creates, it basically walks through and it creates a folder that I can just replace the GDE the local units send us. So that's what that one is. Let me say open in Pro. And yes, you do need Pro to run this one, and it does need to be a registered version. You might have noticed that the version of Pro that I was running was licensed to the K-12 group. During COVID, when I was rewriting the script while everything was shut down, I was really thinking that I was going to turn all this over to Ishwan and his team down in Eastern so that they could rebuild these for the locals and maybe create a project for the K-12 group, but they latched on to a project to do shoreline inventory that came out of the developer session at ESRI. There's where it splits out the communities. Let me swing down. So this is where it's just basically assembling the table. These are all the fields that we're going after. We're going after PNUM. We're going after the school district. We're going after all the different value categories inside BS&A and ending with some ag stuff. And it's going to go through and create all new parcel geography, trying to get rid of nodes. Our parcels have not been through the ESRI cleaning phases that we have to go through to be able to get it in the new parcel fabric. So we have a lot of extra nodes. During the developer conference, it was interesting because they actually mentioned that having a lot of nodes in your parcel geometry actually slows down your sites. And we did notice that for these dashboards. So what that's going to do is going to go through and buffer your parcels out and then in to try and get rid of a bunch of the nodes. And it actually speeds up the dashboards. And it creates kind of an interesting little parcel view. It does the same thing for your local units to build all those geographies out. And again, if people want to go over the script itself, we can do a lunchtime, let's dive into the script or some scripting. Actually, it'd be nice to do some of these because I was trying to harvest the dates out of the local unit files. And I think Anthony actually came up with a way to do it. And the two ways I was coming up with came back with nulls. So it's going through basically doing a bunch of calculate. So it's going through and finding all those assessing groups. Tons of language in here. I think it's up to almost 1,700 lines. Let's have a look at what this one is. Yeah, 1686. So basically, if you want to have the script, they're all out there. The links are probably showing up in your chat. There's one running for, this is Mecosta County. There's one running for Sanilac County. There's one, of course, running for St. Clair County. Those are all out there on the Google Share Drive. If your Sidwell ID number sequence is not the same as ours, in this one, I did note with, I believe, Big Rapids and the different places to be able to find the Sidwell components. If anybody's faster at Python than I am and they want to take on the challenge of making it so the code actually understands, I started putting that logic in, but since I'm in St. Clair County, I pretty much stopped with these partners. Looks like 11:27, so I've been talking for about 20 minutes. So just kind of in summary, one of the presentations I gave once for a GeoCortex thing, Steve Madison with Latitude mentioned that he was very impressed because it was a bunch of little things that added up to be one nice big thing. And I think that's what we have here is we have worked probably for over a decade making maps for our local units. And each one of those individual pieces has played into getting ready for a dashboard to be able to pull this data and host it out. My main goal was to be able to make ArcMap Desktop be able to label all these places and color them better, not to create a desktop, but it played into a desktop really well. And just as a quick closer, let me go back to the content and the groups. Story maps have been great. We threw together a story map for my equalization director on the various projects that we've come and played with on ArcGIS Online and using dashboards. So just as a quick closer, I'll show you a few of these. If you're a pivot point customer, we built a map that goes through the data that Pivot Point stores online. It's really cool because it allows you to go through and target certain projects. And Pivot Point is probably telling me that it wants me to sign in. So you can actually filter out your Pivot Point data by the order set, group status, who did it. The pictures are actually linked on here, so you can click on a picture and see what's going on. So that was a really cool dashboard. Simple to set up because all the Pivot Point data is in ArcGIS Online. Last visited is a category in BS&A for equalization. At the county side level, it's interesting because we can chart out when the equalization people were visiting a parcel last. They don't have the same requirement as the local units to actually visit everything within 5 years. But it's been kind of interesting to see how places have been visited. A lot of these null values that don't have data, we're finding those are in maybe they're split parcels, maybe they're tax exempt parcels that we visited with another project, but those dates are somewhere else. So that was an interesting one. This is the 4015 appraised by EQ. This was a board, we threw it together in an afternoon. Come on. So that looked at the 4015 checkbox for last year so that you could quickly look at an area and see what percentage of the land value is contributing to the total true cash value in the database. Looks like it's going a little slow too. See if we can zoom in somewhere with less records. So you can see in this area, it's ag, so more of the dirt value is going to be attributed to the parcel. So there's 56 parcels and 80%. So if you zoom over to where we're getting into some more commercial areas, you can see that number drop. And we did some work trying to do ag exemptions and to determine for using buffering how the ag exemptions are playing. So that's pretty much what I was going to cover, and it looks like it was about the same time frame that I thought I was going to cover it in. If there's any questions, thoughts, or ideas, you can entertain those.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor, for showing us that. So far, no questions have come in, but if anybody has any, we've got plenty of time for some questions and can take those. So post up your questions using the questions panel. And I guess I got a couple of questions. I'll just feed to you, Trevor. What was the most, in the process of setting up and pulling this data, was there anything initially when you were first setting up different maps for this that really, you know, I'll say stuck out to you or surprised you in what the data was saying?
It's always been a challenge as a GIS person to try and create what is titled land value, because I always think value is dollars. But for the assessors, they just want to see how the land has been valued. And seeing how that is mapped through a community has been very interesting. It's been a pretty big challenge being working at St. Clair County, because all the assessors and all the assessing communities, where they are and the different manuals may be different. Like we have a community who's maybe up on the latest manual, and they've gone through all their rate tables, and they were the ones that were asking, hey, can you go into the rate tables and pull and put exactly what rate table is on the map? So that, yep, that's going to be a challenge, but we'll try it. Took a few years, and now we've got it to where we can put the rate table on the map. But for those communities who are maybe on an older manual where they're doing the rate tables a different way, there may be like 5 different rate tables that are used on one parcel. So to get all of those labels on that parcel for that community is more than challenging. So we still have to have, now there's the 11 by 17 series, there's a set with the simplified labels, and then there's a set with the more complicated labels. So I think that the biggest challenge has been helping the range in communities from Lynn Township with only with less than 1,000 parcels versus helping out Fort Gratiot, which is a charter township with considerably more parcels and a lot more industrial and commercial. So that's been a challenge. Picking fields out of BS&A that are the ones that are the best suited, that's been a little bit of a challenge, but it hasn't been too bad. Again, thanks to Dan and Dave for helping us out to figure out some of these little nuances, like the developed category that you're going after. And in the March border review time, just getting the data in that stressful time from the locals has been a challenge, and trying to simplify that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And you speak to it quite well. You know, obviously each municipality, when we're trying to do something on a countywide scale, every municipality, every assessor does things a little bit different. Question that comes in, and it supports this too, from Andrew, each unit uses different methods to value land. So from the county perspective, it's often very difficult to create a system to generate maps when there's such a lack of uniformity. So again, speaking to that exact same thing. And I know there are efforts under the assessing standards that are starting to be put in place and things like that to try to get some of this a little more standardized, but it's certainly a challenge we'll always have to deal with.
And when the script runs, we've kept that local unit component. I know there's several of our peers that when they help their assessors do their March border review mapping, they might go through each community and do the same. Yeah, there's got to be like 100 steps to make the maps for that community, and they'll go through one community at a time. That became really difficult for the 30 that we have here, which is where the script came into play. This is the first time it's been a single script where it runs and it builds everything all in one step. Before, I think I had 4 or 5 different models that I would run in desktop, and the models would generate the output that facilitated all these maps. But now that there's one script, it's become a lot easier. The target time frame I was looking at was hopefully the script would run overnight. When David Kerwin and I were testing it. He ran our script on his machine, and it took it 20 minutes to generate that entire data set and be up and ready for mapping. So with the new computing technology, it's become a lot faster to go through and make these data sets.
Yeah, and I'm finding as I've done some of the different, no, not in the dashboards like you've done, but we've done some for our assessors. You know, those uniformities are so critical, and thankfully for Muskegon County, the assessors have for many years been trying to be consistent, but it's still all over the board. So that's good.
And the dashboards do kind of choke out when they get over 50 categories. You'll see it ask you to zoom in and get a little bit more. But hopefully now that they're able to see these lists and they can see how many different rate table combinations they're coming up with, we can start cleaning those up. The bad thing about the script is it's not able to sort those rate table classifications. So if an assessor goes in and says, this parcel has drain right away first and then road right away second, and then the next parcel they're flipped, that's going to be a whole new category to the map. So.
Oh, sure. Yep. Yeah, when they're using those multiple categories. So good. Well, that's the only question we had come in, Trevor. I know you've been more than gracious in working with adjacent counties and other people that are wanting to kind of leverage this. I shared out all the links you'd shared with me, and to everyone attending, we will get these links all posted also with the slide deck and the story map and the dashboard stuff to our website along with the recording. That'll get posted next week. But I know, Trevor, you have also worked with people, not that you want this to become a job to set this up for everybody, but I know you've been more than willing to share your Python scripts and things like that. I think you like to tend to tweak it a little bit before you share it because, you know, for each person that's asking, is that correct?
It's helpful. The only things I've run across in the code that threw it for a loop are expected. You definitely have to go in and train it your parcel ID sequence. For the Big Rapids scenario, some of their parcels in the parcel ID field, there was like a description of what it was for, like, I think it was educational areas. There was a whole like text description of this is the blah 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 building. That threw the script for a loop a little bit. And the other one that kind of threw me is I had the same field name for my link field as somebody else had in their data set, and that was a little bit of a trick to jump through. But there wasn't anything overly difficult. It probably took 10 minutes to go through and find those changes. If you do download the Big Rapids script and you search for the keyword, I think it was Big Rapids, it'll show you all the places where I made changes to adjust their Sidwell ID syntax.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you, Trevor, for sharing all this. I didn't see any other questions come in. So I'll go ahead and snag presentation mode back from you and show my screen. And again, thank you, Trevor, for just taking the time to share with us. I know it's going to generate a lot of follow-up questions, so we will make sure to get those questions to Trevor if you send them to us. Obviously, Trevor's got his contact information via his website at St. Clair. And again, just so much information that we can share within this assessing data and the amount of data that's in that BS&A environment. So thanks again, Trevor, for sharing with us, and I'm sure we'll get you some questions. With that, I just want to remind everybody that we do have a couple of upcoming events. Like I said earlier, we thank Trevor for today, and then we have our roundtable next week, and then the next webinar is scheduled for July 22nd. Took a couple of weeks off during the whole ESRI annual conference, as well as the 4th of July week. So a little bit longer delay until our next webinar, but with the holiday and then the ESRI UC online. So make sure to attend that ESRI UC, a lot of information there. I didn't put it on the slide, but also during the Tuesday of the ESRI UC, IMAGIN is hosting in-person meetups around the state at 6 locations. Normally when most of us or many of us are out in San Diego, we'll do a Michigan meetup out in San Diego. Well, we're not in San Diego for the conference this year, but we can meet up as things are opening up. So check out our website for those meetups as well. And with that, again, thank you, Trevor, and thank you everyone for attending, and we'll post the recording up hopefully by early to mid next week. And with that, have a safe and good rest of your week, everyone.